Hello and welcome to the Health Tech Marketing Show. I am your host, Adam Chirinas. I'm the CEO of Health Launchpad, who brings you this podcast, which I think now it's going to be episode 62, 63, something like that. So it's been rocking and rolling for a while. I want to give a big thank you to you for listening or watching, and I want to give a big thank you to our longtime sponsors, HIMSS, who have been a big supporter of a lot of what we've been doing for the last few years. So very grateful to them for that. Let me introduce our guest. So today we're going to talk about product marketing, and wonderful person to help us with this conversation, my good friend, Mr. Mike Gemmati. So Mike, how are you? Welcome.
Doing good, Adam. Thanks. Always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend.
You too. So tell us about yourself. Where do you currently work? What do you do? And we'll talk a little bit about your passion for product marketing, and then we'll kind of get into what product marketing actually is and isn't.
Sure, which is equally as important. So Mike Gemmati, currently head of marketing and portfolio strategy at Health Recovery Solutions, which is sort of the leading remote patient monitoring vendor for providing care at home. But my healthcare journey started in the Army. So when I was in the Army, I actually worked in the medical field. I was a biomedical engineer working in hospitals, servicing medical equipment. And I had some amazing experiences during those 9 years that I was in the military working in hospitals. Really incredible both clinician and patient interactions, one of which really inspired me and gave me a moment of clarity that, hey, this, healthcare, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And in one way or another, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, but I knew that the work that I was doing was contributing to the health of that patient and, their outcomes. And I had to figure out a way to maintain that. So once I got out of the Army, I started working for a healthcare company here in Orlando, Florida, which is where I live, called In Vivo, and they work on MRI patient monitor. So patient monitor that can actually go inside of an MR environment during, which is a very harsh environment, I guess, for electronic equipment in general, that giant magnet, but they figured out a really unique way to make that equipment work. And there I was a service manager, and then I worked in operations as a manager for a while, kind of continuing that more technical path that I had started in the military. But then we got acquired by Philips. And after we got acquired, we brand new general manager came in. I'll never forget his name, Shalab Chandra. He's actually CEO of Space Labs now, president or CEO of Space Labs now. So, but fantastic gentleman. Came in and had the marketing guy that was in the organization at the time start a strategy project to sort of to get marketing leading the organization in terms of roadmap, client needs, where we really should take our solutions in the future. And I got brought on because of my service expertise, but I was asking a lot of questions, just coming from a healthcare background, that I think the marketing gentleman that was leading the organization maybe didn't appreciate too much because they were quite pointed questions. But Shalab appreciated them and pulled me in his office afterwards, asked me to stick around in those meetings. And then a few meetings later, pulled me back in his office again and said, have you ever thought about marketing? And I hadn't. My view of marketing was, what you see in TVs and movies. It's like, oh, there's advertisements, commercials, like this sort of thing. And he's like, no, you're a marketer. And I didn't know what that meant at the time, but reflecting on it, I think what he saw was my passion for customers and customer insight, really wanting to get down to their needs and understand them and figure out solutions to the problems that they were having, right? So it was the way I was thinking. And from there, he had me lead the rest of those sessions and the rest of that strategy project. And then I was able to present sort of the leadership, our vision, our roadmap, where we want to take the organization. And from there, he moved me into marketing. And my first role was as a product marketer. And I did that for about 12 years. And what was really great about that is that organization, after we got acquired, was still, even though we were in Philips and this is a large global organization, we still were structured like a small company within the large organization. So even though it was product marketing, and in Philips, product marketing is also product management, which I'm sure we'll chat about. But I got to work really sort of the end-to-end spectrum of marketing, you know, from inception of a product all the way through even its end of life. So it was a really rewarding experience. And then from there, I moved into some mergers and acquisitions work, and then ultimately I sort of led marketing operations for a divisional level and within Philips before then moving here to Health Recovery Solutions.
Yeah. So you're although you're a marketing you're doing full stack marketing in your current role, but clearly your passion is product marketing. And I think for a lot of people, where the line is between product marketing and other aspects of marketing gets a bit blurry. So give us a definition. What is product marketing and what is it not?
I hate to say what it's not because, well, let me start with what it is, I suppose, textbook, right? You know, textbook, it's all about communication and customer adoption of products that your organization is releasing, right? I mean, full stop, that's the sum of it all. But so what it's not in some organizations is the actual development of the product. What it's not in some organizations is maybe some of the larger branding, you know, more upstream, you know, marketing communications. But the best product marketers, in my experience, the best product marketing strategies sort of bring elements of both those sides in. You know, I always have viewed product marketing as a bit of a centerpiece in an organization. It really is the bridge between the technical and the more, you know, the communication side. So you need to have a foot in both those worlds in order to be, I think, truly effective as a product marketer. And, you know, again, like I mentioned, in some organizations, you know, product management and product marketing are even one role. In my current organization, product marketing and the rest of marketing is also sort of one role, you know, the rest of marketing communications. So I think it can kind of go both ways depending on how the organization is structured, the size of it, and so forth. But regardless, if you want to be a great product marketer, I think you need to have a bit of foot in both worlds to truly be effective.
There's always a lot of debate about SDRs as to whether they should report to sales or marketing. So product marketing, should it report to product management or should it report to the CMO?
Yes, classic debate, classic debate. I believe, and this is just my opinion, I truly believe it should report into marketing. At the end of the day, it's still your product marketing, right? Your product communications are probably core to your organizational communications, right? If your goal is to sell products, right? So I think disconnecting those you would lose in some of the larger sort of umbrella messaging that you're trying to get across, and I think some of the even go-to-market strategies would be a little bit more difficult to sort of break into or establish without being as aligned with marketing as you would be reporting into that organization. On the development side of things, I think it's still important to be extremely connected to that organization, and we can talk about, you know, even at stages within that process. But reporting into it, I think, would end up would give that product marketer probably a disadvantage in terms of their capabilities, some of the tools within their toolbox that they can leverage.
So I think you painted a clear picture where whoever's in charge of product management, it's like the kind of the engineering side of things, and how marketing views product marketing. It's sort of that sort of if you overlap if you do the Venn diagrams, it's that bit between the two of them.
Absolutely.
What about, you know, the rest of it? What does CEOs and sales typically think the role of product marketing is? Do they understand it?
I don't know that they would if it's effective in the organization. If you have a good product marketer that's doing their job, then they absolutely should. Because another aspect of product marketing, this is why I say it's a bit of a centerpiece for an organization. You know, the other aspect is really aligning cross-functionally the entire organization in the readiness and ultimately the launch of a product. And that definitely includes sales. You know, I spent a lot of time with sales in my product marketing role, not just from the actual release and launch of a product. And, you know, there are lots of deliverables you want to do there from a sales enablement perspective to make sure that they fully understand the value of that product, that they're armed and able to communicate that value, that they understand the objections they may receive, the competitive advantages of the product, who should they be discussing the product to, and in what aspects should they be discussing it. All of those things, you really have to go in depth, build the right playbooks, build the right content in order to train and facilitate the sales team's ability to share the communications that you've created. But you also need to spend a lot of time with them up front with customers. You know, if you're a product marketer and you've never met a customer, if you're not spending regular time with customers, you're not going to be great at what you do. And one of the easiest ways to access those customers in that time is through the sales channel. You know, spending time with them, ride-alongs, things like that, visiting accounts, being able to, you know, kind of ask questions, hear the conversations, but also learn from the sales channel, because product marketing, it's about the communication, it's about connecting with the customers, but it's also about those strategies, the channel strategies, the positioning, the pricing strategies that are going to be effective for the business. And you need to understand those dynamics through sales as well, and sort of what they're facing, so that you can kind of figure out how to help better set the stage for them to be successful.
And what is, you know, you're talking about what great product marketing looks like. So just give us a like clear definition. What does good look like? What does it take to be, you know, be a superstar at product marketing?
To be a superstar, first and foremost, you need to be extremely customer-centric. Extremely. Like I said, you should be spending time with customers. You should be constantly inquiring into, you know, their needs, understanding their workflows. And this is where it sometimes makes sense because this is also a realm where product management needs to be involved. They need to understand those workflows and the needs of the customers, because they're prioritizing, you know, features and you know, the value of a product and which products make sense. But as the product marketer, you need to be just as in tune, because ultimately you're going to translate those needs, both functional and emotional, into effective messaging. So you need to be spending time with customers. You need to be extremely customer focused. I think you need to have some level of technical aptitude to be truly effective. It's enough, you know, it's obviously important to kind of have that creative, classic marketing downstream side of, you know, how do you craft the right effective message that's going to reach your audience and resonate with that audience. But if you're not attuned to the product on a bit of a technical level, you probably are missing opportunities of things you could communicate, or the way you communicate them, or really delivering that full value of a feature. So you need to have some level of aptitude there. And that's where I think being involved in the development process early on, when requirements are being created, when that insight's being translated into sort of technical specifications, and even at different stages throughout, during some of the beta testing, I think these are important points for product marketing to get involved. Ultimately, it's going to help your strategies downstream. And then the third part is to really think about, to be strategic. A lot of times I've seen product marketing minimized to, hey, create some great slides for sales, figure out what, you know, the landing page should look like on the website, things of that nature, which are of course all important pieces. But go-to-market strategy around the product, how you take that product and not just communicate it, but get it in front of the right people in the right way, the positioning piece, the channel strategy, all those aspects too. And that's why I say you need to be, I think it should be fully aligned with marketing. You need to be able to think about the way you deliver marketing as an organization, and then how you can kind of fit the product into those elements effectively. So in summary, extremely customer focused, some technical savvy, and then intimate with all aspects of your marketing capabilities within the organization.
It sounds like, though, that the superpower, if you could only be good at one thing, the superpower is to be the most knowledgeable person in the organization about the customer.
Absolutely.
Not specifically about your customers and sort of like, are they happy or not? It's just like how they buy, what the value is the product delivers, what it is they want from you going forward.
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, one of the great tools I love to use is, you know, customer journey mapping. You should, be intimate with every level of that, you know, from initial consideration all the way through
Yeah.
even sort of retaining customers. Yeah.
Yeah, blow it out a bit. So it's like the customer. So take us through a customer journey map process. How do you do? Because everybody does it sort of differently. What's your customer journey process?
Well, I think it's first by sort of mapping out. I usually start by sort of mapping out the big blocks, right? Okay, you're in the consideration phase. You know, maybe you're doing some investigation, maybe not in market yet, ready to make a purchase, right? But sort of, okay, where are you doing that research at? What sites? And you can start to kind of dive deep into that area. Okay, actively evaluating. You're ready to make a move. What are you doing? Are you researching vendors? Are you using a third party? Are you using a GPO? You know, how are you finding out who those players are, getting those quotes, doing RFPs, things like of that nature. So that's sort of the next stage I would move to. Then you're starting to compare folks, right? Okay, maybe now you have a sense of, you know, what offers are out there, you know, what capabilities are. You're matching those up. You're doing some evaluation of those. So that there, you know, this where you really get into your competitive intelligence is extremely important here. You know, it's important way up front as well too, because you always sort of want to get in front of line. You know, I always say the brand that's remembered is the brand that's chosen. Typically, like I think more than 70% of the time, statistically, if the brand is remembered, is the brand is chosen. So you want to get in front of your competition even early on, obviously. But when you get down to those active evaluations, which we all do at some point, then that would sort of be the next phase there. And then you get into your kind of pricing negotiation piece. And then I think you need to continue it post-purchase. I think you need to get into the service experience. I think you need to get into upsell, cross-sell opportunities, expansion opportunities with the customer. What does that look like? And then ultimately renewal, retention, you know, the loyalty piece of a customer journey. What are the considerations there? I think all of those things are important. So I kind of map out those big blocks, I would say, as a starter. That's a kind of a rough estimate of what I start with. But as you do your investigation, you ultimately kind of have little mini blocks along the way, depending on the segment and the particular industry that you're in, maybe the particular product segment that you're in.
So the purchase process, the buying and marketing part of that makes a lot of sense. Do you get much involved in, you know, particularly in a B2B situation where your customers are healthcare systems, right? But the users are actually, in your case, I mean, your users are, I guess, clinicians who are working with patients right in the home.
Absolutely.
So do you get, in product marketing, do you get involved in, you know, driving usage at all?
You need to, you know, you should be as intimate with your product post-market as a product manager should be. Because ultimately that's part of it could be the way you delivering that product affecting the way it's being used. I think people don't realize that sometimes, but if you establish through the communication, you know, the way you sold that product, if you set it up for a certain use case that isn't actually the realistic use case that customers are experiencing with the product, or if it's not matching with the value that product intended for it to have, then you're going to get, you know, low usage or misusage of a product, and ultimately that's going to reflect in the satisfaction with that product, right? You should be monitoring this, you know, one of your KPIs. So I think absolutely you need to be involved throughout the full life cycle of that product, because what you're also going to gain are through that, you know, by trying to drive usage, you're going to understand some new behaviors, and you're going to get feedback and understand, you know, hey, if it truly is a deficiency in the product, you can feed that back to product for the next generation or for improvements they make to the existing solution. So I think it's absolutely critical that product marketing be involved with all aspects of post-market, including even the way that product is serviced, which can be oftentimes one of the main reasons somebody moves away from a product or even a vendor altogether.
How do you think product marketing is changing?
You know, I think at its core, it's always going to be about connecting with customers, you know, around their functional and their emotional needs, you know, through a product and the product's, you know, value proposition. How it's changing, I think, is sort of just in the way products are changing, right? You know, I mean, when I first started in product marketing, it was really, you know, big box sales. right? So you had a single product and sort of a one single launch, big
Mm.
messaging all around that product. And obviously that still exists in a lot of product segments, but you know, SaaS solutions, software solutions, software as a service solutions are much more prominent now. And there's different. We're now as a product marketer, you need to sort of have a bit of a understanding of the full roadmap, that full vision for a solution and what it's trying to achieve at the highest level. But then you need to be able to dive deeper into sort of each release tied to that solution and how they become more chapters of a larger story instead of just sort of dropping the whole book at once. And so being able to craft that communication strategy for SaaS solutions is definitely an evolution, or maybe not so much new anymore, but definitely is one way it's changed. And now that we're getting into AI solutions, it gets even a little bit more complex because you also have the challenge of helping people understand, I think, the use cases, the value, eliminating, there's some negative connotation around AI. You also have to kind of get through that and help people overcome those, maybe fears or apprehensions. So AI becomes, sort of this new beast that I think product marketing has to wrestle with from a communication standpoint, but it still comes down to the fundamentals at the end of the day.
Makes sense. So you talked about customer insights.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to anyone about how to get customer insights and do it well?
First and foremost, to go back to what I said originally, which is get there with customers. Be there at the site where they're using existing products, where they're facing the challenge that ultimately, your solutions would be looking to solve. Because you'll not just be able to dive deeper when you're there talking with them, meeting with them in person. I mean, you could argue, well, I could do that virtually as well. I can set up a meeting with a customer, and that's also great, right? If that's all you have access to, I mean, do as much as you can to be in person with them. Then you can kind of get into the 5 whys of, hey, they, stated they have a problem. Well, why is that? Hey, they stated, then they dive a bit deeper. Why is that? The classic 5 whys really is a great way to get down to true insight. But what I learned a lot about my customers was through observation as well, especially if you have a physical product where there's, a use case, a workflow that you're trying to help them navigate, make more efficient perhaps. There's so much that they don't even realize that maybe they figured out workarounds and they just do it and it's become a natural part of their process, but it actually is a deficiency or an inefficiency. And so just by observing, you learn so much, and then you can ask pointed questions and maybe even help them realize things they didn't realize. Also, I find that customers have not difficulty, but they don't often do well at articulating truly what the problem is. It's more on the surface level of the frustration in the moment, in that particular point of frustration. But you have to work backwards from there, and spending time with them is kind of how you get to that, more root cause of customer insight.
But how do you do observation? I mean, like do you just follow a doctor around for a day or something like that? How do you do that?
I've done that for sure. I've been, prior to visits, asked permission to record. So I've done lots of times where I've recorded. I've also done an interesting thing, which is, one time I even invited a lot of clients back to our office, and in sort of our back warehouse, I built an entire MRI suite, a mock MRI suite with a model of an MRI and kind of closed off sort of walls and doorways and a patient bed and all the sort of equipment they would go through, and brought them to us and simulated, show me this. And then we're able to even sort of test on the fly different solutions to see how that would affect their workflow, just to sort of get insight from, hey, if I introduce this piece here, does that change what you do, how you connect things to a patient? So I think there's sort of a lot of different ways to do the observation. The other thing I would say is when I'm doing customer insight, I always build an army to support me, right? It's not enough. I think as a product marketer, one of your responsibilities is to be that customer advocate for your organization and infuse customer insights throughout the organization. So when I would come back from a customer site, I would bring those videos, audio clips, or even just write-ups, photos, anything I learned, I would bring it back and I would do lunch and learns that included our engineering organization, our quality organization, our supply chain.
Cool. Yeah.
But I think it's the other way around too. I would get them in front of customers and I would have them come back and report, because it would get them thinking differently. They obviously have a different perspective than I do, due to the nature of their role. And I would kind of get insights that way as well too, which I always found really, really
Mm.
fascinating. To hear an engineer come back from the site and what they learned and the types of questions they asked that I might not have thought about.
I've always been a big admirer of IDEO,
Yes,
that's
yes,
pioneered, just pioneered the sort of customer led, I guess, approach, observation led approach to product design. And one of the things that I worked for a company where we went and observed IDEO. How do you do the work that you do? And I thought there was a couple of things that I thought was really interesting. One was the way they do observation. So it isn't just doing focus groups or one-on-one interviews. It's, as you described there, observing people using the product or dealing with a problem that you're trying to solve for. And then the second part of it was a very iterative approach to product development.
yep.
So, you start off with a paper prototype, then you might do a sort of a simple model of it. And then, it really takes a while to get to the point where you've got a finished product or a finished process. So very interesting the way they worked, and they've kind of written the book on that approach.
Yeah,
to product.
some of the methods I would use observing too is obviously spaghetti mapping. If you've ever heard that term, but that's
What is spaghetti mapping?
That's sort of classic, Toyota lean concept, that they would do on a sort of a manufacturing floor, right? Follow a worker as they go to pick a part, move it over here, assemble it, drop it off at the next station, and you kind of map that out in one continuous line as you're going. And at the end of the day, you see the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different stops that person had to make, and it looks like a plate of spaghetti, right? And okay, what do you do to make that a straight line, right? Ultimately, right, to make it as more efficient as possible. So depending on the nature of your product, that's one method that maybe applies to you. We would do when we get into that more iterative process, as you mentioned, sort of after you've distilled insights, in which case I would use like a value proposition house, value proposition creation as a tool to sort of lay out the insights. Who are they for? How is the competition trying to address these insights? What are the benefits our ideal solution would provide? What are the reasons to believe that we can deliver that? And sort of what are the differentiators? That's a classic value proposition house. And from there, you can do like a voice of customer tree to distill that into sort of critical to quality requirements, your sort of first commercial requirements that ultimately will start to become the foundation for your messaging downstream. But we would do through the iterative process, focus groups, obviously prototype testing, things like that. And I think, again, if product marketing is not part of the product organization, or if it's not a unified role as also a product manager, get yourself involved in those pieces, just as you said.
Yes.
You're going to learn a lot, and it's going to help you refine the way you go to market downstream.
It seems to me that one of the key things that you need to be good at to be a product marketer is collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
There's that, and I mean, describe what that looks like. I mean, is that like the other superpower in terms of being an expert at the customer is one, but maybe collaboration is the other?
It's I don't know if superpower is the right way to describe that. I say it's table stakes, again, to be an effective product marketer. So a lot of time, and maybe even most times, sadly, I would say in organizations, when the product is done is when they get marketing involved. When the product's the finish line is in sight. Then it's like, okay, we have to launch this. Hey, we need this, we need that, we need it, right? And then you're kind of doing a mad scramble at the end to get that thing out in the market. And ultimately, it'll be a stumble and probably a fall out into the market. Go-to-market readiness is something that's overlooked often. And go-to-market readiness isn't just about, hey, having all that collateral and that messaging sort of created, validated with customers. There's another important aspect. Even your messaging, you need to go back and test with customers and really validate. And does this resonate?
Yeah.
Is it really translating? But it's not just about kind of those classic marketing aspects and making sure all of those things are in place. What do we need to do? A brochure? What's the website going to look? All that stuff. But it's about aligning the organization to be ready for the successful release of that product. And there's where a partnership with product management is super essential. But as a product marketer, ultimately, I believe it's your responsibility to make sure that everything that's going to be necessary for the effective delivery of that product commercially, you are bringing those teams together early on and making sure they're ready. So that includes your sales channel. That probably includes your customer support, center, your service channel, all of those things, because you're also going to want a message around all of that. You're going to want to talk about, hey, this product is coming. Here's what's coming with it. And so you're going to need to align those organizations and make sure that ultimately, they're tied in with what you're trying to accomplish with the product so that they can play their role in helping you deliver it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that makes sense. But Michael, this has been great. Just a sort of a wrap-up question here. What advice would you give to anyone out there that's trying to figure out how they actually create a better product marketing capability within their organization?
Well, maybe two parts. If you're trying to create the capability, build a dedicated role for it, because if it's done right, it'll be full-time. And that role will provide value for your organization beyond even just sort of the successful introduction and life of your solutions. I think they will provide insight that will help you with your business strategy. I think they'll provide insight that will help your other marketing goals. And ultimately, it'll be a role that will help your product team create better products going forward. So I think it is an essential role for any organization that I truly believe should be a standalone full-time role. So that's one piece of advice I would give for the organization. It is a strategic advantage to have a seasoned product marketer in your organization. For the product marketer in that organization, one piece of advice I would give them is make sure when you're creating communications around a product, don't overlook the emotional needs of your customers in that communication. I think we're great at communicating around the functional needs of solutions, but what's going to connect first with anybody you're trying to talk about the value proposition for a product is going to be the emotional need. If they're feeling frustrated, talk to that frustration before you talk to the features that are solving the frustration. I think that's just overlooked a lot, but that's some of the best messaging that's really resonated, even if you look outside of our health tech industry and look commercially out in the world, the classic Apple commercial. It's the emotional elements that ultimately draw people in. And then they're going to ask those other questions and, of course, have those proof points ready too. So I would say don't overlook that. And if you're leveraging AI tools too often, too much for your communications, if you're taking the shortcuts there, you're going to miss that piece, because it's not going to translate the way it will if you as a person sort of really connect to that customer insight and write it yourself. So that would be my advice for them.
Well, Michael, thank you. That was really helpful. Really, really good. I'm sure anybody out there who's thinking about product marketing and how to improve it is going to have found everything you've said really helpful, very focusing. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up and thank Michael for his time today. And also, thank you again to you for listening out there. And if you're watching this, you can subscribe on Spotify or Apple or all the different podcast applications. And if you're listening to this, do go over to healthlaunchpad.com. There'll be a blog post summarizing this conversation, which I think makes it helpful and can help you kind of turn the conversation into sort of real simple little actions that you can take. So with that, thank you to you. Thank you, Michael, again, and see you on the next show.